Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Decryption and I hope you are well. Lootable chests or lootable boxes, crates, bodies, anything like that is a huge part in a lot of type of games. From Fallout to looting enemies or looting containers, to Skyrim to looting chests, peasants, Cyberpunk looting bodies and computers, looting is a huge part of games. It allows the player to gather more items, sometimes store items, and the vast majority of games nowadays has some sort of looting system. So in today's tutorial we're going to go and make this chest here where you can open it, grab the items from it, or even put the items into it if you really want to, and then leave it. As a tie-up we will also add it into an existing quest that we have so you can loot specific items from it. This will require the use of the narrative inventory for this tutorial, but if you have your own inventory then I'll try to show you where to apply it and when. So let's get started. So getting started, the first thing we're going to look at doing is actually creating a chest. So we can actually go to it, we're going to add some animations, a basic sound as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come into my blueprints in my content drawer, and I'm going to go into my MISC folder, and I'm going to create a new folder called looting. So in here, I'm going to right click, blueprint class, and I'm going to set it to a type of actor, and I'm going to call it BPA_lootable. And the reason we're calling it BPA is because we're going to make this abstract, and I'm going to open it up. The first thing I'm going to do is click class settings, and I'm going to go to advanced and take generate abstract class. And the reason we're doing this is because we may have many lootable things, different types of chests, we may have small boxes, some crates, all of these static looting type objects, and this BPA will be able to handle most of them. So next, after I've created this BPA lootable, I'm actually going to come back out to the blueprints, and I'm going to go into my interfaces folder. Now, if you don't have one, just create one. And I'm going to right click blueprint, and I'm going to choose blueprint interface, and I'm going to call it BPI_lootable. And with the reason we're doing an interface is so we don't have to cast every time we try to use it. If we ever need to, we can just immediately know that it's lootable and we don't have to cast and tie up all that memory resource. So I'm going to open up BPI lootable, and this is where we start thinking about the functions that we actually need. So the first function we're going to need is some type of container open, or something to tell it start opening. So I'm going to go in and type start open as my function name, and we don't need to pass any parameters to it, so that'll literally just be one we call. Next we need to start the looting, so I will add one called start loot, which will actually initiate the looting aspect. And then finally I will add one more function called end loot, which will be when we cross it off we tell the chest to close itself again. And with that we can compile and save. Now back on our BPA lootable, in the class settings, in implemented interfaces, I'm going to add our BPI lootable, and now you'll see down the side we have the interfaces. By default we don't need to do anything on these, so I'm just going to delete all the events in the event graph. But if you did want to implement one of these interfaces, you simply just double click it. The reason we've added the interface to the BPA lootable is it means any child blueprints of this blueprint can use this interface, but it also means if you ever did want to add some generic stuff to it, so for example on start loot you may want every person to say a chest or something like that, it means we can add it to this one place instead of every single time when you do it. And the reason we've made it abstract is it means we can't drag this out. This blueprint won't let you drag it out. It's a settings only blueprint. So how do we use it? We create a child blueprint of it. I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose create child blueprint class, and inside here I will call it lootable_chest. And now this one we can drag into the world like so. So let's go and actually populate it. So if I open up this lootable chest here, I'm going to first add a static mesh, and this will be my chest body. And now I need to find a static mesh of a chest. I believe one of my Cinti packs has it, so let's go with chest 01. There we go, we have a chest with bits in it. Now we need a chest lid in my case, and if you don't have models of this, find something that you have online. Just use a couple of cubes if you want to until you've got proper models. And after this I'm going to add another static mesh inside of it for the top, and I will call this chest top. And in static meshes I'll search for chest again, and we have the chest 01 lid here. So you'll see it's put it at the bottom at the moment, which isn't fantastically placed. For some reason it's at the back, so what I'm going to do is just move this into position like so. There we go. Now we can compile and save, and you will see in your world your chest now has a model. Currently it's facing the wrong way, so I'm just going to rotate it around like so. There we go. So just to be a little bit more efficient on my lootable chest, I'm actually going to go and click on both of these, and I'm going to remove all collision from them. So untick generate overlap events, untick the can character correct step on, and I'm going to change the collision presets to no collision. I'm also going to search for nav mesh and untick navigation. You might think we actually need the collision, and we do, but to simplify it, I'm simply going to come in and I'm going to add a box collision here. Instead of having all the different polys that the collision may have for the lid, and so we can just use one simple box to cover all of it. And we can absolutely use this box for the lootable aspects, and we can also allow it to take over the navigation. So it's just a little bit more efficient, and there you can see there is our chest ready to be interacted with. So next we need a way to actually start using this lootable chest. So the narrative plugins that I'm going to be using will be the narrative inventory, which will control the player's inventory, which I've set up in a previous video, which you can see on screen here, and the narrative interaction plugin, which allows us to interact with certain objects in the world, but also contains plugins for the inventory. If you have your own inventory, that's completely fine, but you just need to make sure it's got some form of looting aspect. If not, you need to find a way to make the lootable interface. Thankfully, narrative does come with these for my sake, so I can use that. And with the interaction, all you're going to need to do is be able to trigger the interaction at specific points. So in my case, what I'm going to do is come back to my BPA lootable, and I'm going to add a narrative inventory directly to the BPA lootable. And you can add some friendly names and default items if you want. I'm just going to leave it at all the defaults for now, compile. But I'm going to jump over to my lootable chest, and I'm going to click the narrative inventory here, and now I'm going to set the details so it's specific to just this chest. So the inventory friendly name will be chest. So I'm going to leave the weight capacity and the currency alone because I don't want it to have any of those. But on the default items, I'm just going to come and add an item, and I will give it just a example item just for now. Later we'll create our own items for the specific quest. So now we actually need to make the chest interactable. So luckily in my case, narrative interaction has a plugin already for this. So if I click add and search for loot, you will see we have an interactable loot interaction component, which is one that narrative defaults for us, and it basically allows us to interact with a narrative inventory component on said object. So I'll compile, jump back over to my lootable chest and click on my interactable loot, and now I can add some specific things. So the action chest is to loot, I want to keep it as that. The interactable name I will set to chest, and then I think I'll just keep everything else alone. If you have some sort of key or something, you can use the requires item to unlock, but now I'm just not going to focus on that, so that's fine. One other thing we need to do before we can actually continue is on our box, the collision profile is set to overlap all dynamic, and you will see in the collision responses, the visibility trace is set to overlap. This won't work with narrative interaction. Narrative interaction will only allow you to interact with something if the visibility is set to block. So all we need to do is set the collision profile from overlap all to block all, just like so. And this will also stop us to running through it. So if we play it now, we should be able to walk up to the chest and see the interaction on screen, but it won't let us loot it just yet. So you can see now as we run up to it, you will see it says chest, press E to loot. But if we press it, nothing happens at the moment, which is completely fine because I've not set up the inventory properly yet. A narrative inventory's lootable interface, you actually need to override a function to tell it this is how you loot objects. So wherever you've stored your inventory for your player, in my case, it's on the player controller. So I'm going to open this up. You will see that I have my narrative inventory here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click it and I'm going to add an event of on begin looting, like so. And it'll give me the loot source here, which will be our narrative inventory object reference. So that's going to be the actual inventory here. And then from there, we can get the owner if we want to get the chest. So if we begin looting, it means that our narrative interactable loot has said it's okay to loot. What we need to do is actually spawn the user interface here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag in my HUD, and then I'm going to drag off of this and do get narrative HUD, which is how I use my common UI for narrative products. And then from here, I'm just going to call open menu. If you don't have the inventory on your player controller, but you have it somewhere else, all you need to do is get access to your existing HUD, and then on your HUD, you just need to get access to narrative HUD there. That's all you need to do. So make sure you promote it to a variable. And then the activatable widget class will simply be our widget looting, and I can compile and save. So now if we walk up to our chest, it'll say press E to loot, but you'll see if we click it, nothing happens. And this is a point in the video that I'm keeping to show you how to debug things like this. So I'm going to press the F8 key to break out here, and it means we can just move around the world and our game is still running. And we know the lootable chest has an interaction element on it because it's showing press E to loot. So why can't we loot it? So I'm going to go back to my BPA lootable, and we see we've got the interactable loot, and that's the only logic we've put on. So I'm going to right click this and choose edit, and it'll take us over here. So you'll see we have this event here, the only one, called event on interact. So for some reason, this isn't working. So I'm going to click on the first node, and I'm going to press the F9 key to add a breakpoint. That's that red dot. You can just press F8 F9 to remove it again. And make sure in your no debug object selected, if you've only got one, it's okay. It'll use that by default. If you've got more than one and no debug object is selected, it won't select one. You have to pick which specific one you want. If you're debugging a specific NPC and you've got loads, just click this and you'll see a list of all the instances. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to my game and I'm going to click the gamepad to jump back in, and then I'm going to press loot, and you'll see my screen will jump and freeze the game into the part where I've breakpointed. And now I can come across, so I'm going to simply use the F10 key to move to the next node, and I'm going to watch wherever this goes, and I'm going to make sure I know what each node does. And this is also a great way to learn blueprints. So this switch has authority, is a macro, see the M, and I believe it's one in Unreal which literally just says if you're playing a multiplayer game, are you as a client allowed to interact with this chest? So in this case, yes I am. So I'm going to press F10, so it gets past it, meaning we're okay. Next we've got this isValid node, which is trying to get the inventory component from the target. So it should be able to get the inventory from the interactor, which is our character. So if I press F10, you'll notice it doesn't go anywhere. Well, that's odd because our player has definitely got an inventory, because if we go back and I press the tab key, I've got an inventory. It's all working fine. So this is where you'll have to start looking at why the player won't have an inventory. So it's looking at the player pawn and it's calling get inventory component from target. So we need to know what this get inventory component from target function does. Now, without going into teaching C++, I already know that this is a bug that I've already fixed, and I've passed it to Ruben himself, and it will be added in narrative 1.7. As of the time of recording, we are still narrative inventory 1.6, so this fix isn't there yet. And basically, get inventory component from target will only check your player state. That's it. It won't check anything else. So no matter what you pass into here, if your player state doesn't have the inventory on it, it's not going to work, which is a little bit annoying, but the bug fix is in the word. However, I can't really give you a video on looting if I can't loot. So what I'm going to do is create a player state just temporarily, just so we can get the looting working, and then when the update rolls out, I'm going to get rid of it because I don't need it in mine. So I'm just going to come down for narrative inventory at least. Yours might work if you don't use narrative inventory. And in my blueprints, I will just come and right click blueprint class, and I'll search for player state. And then on player state, I'll just click select. I'll call it BP_player state, and I'll open this up. Now I'm going to jump back to my ALS player controller. I'm going to click the inventory and cut it, and it'll say warning there are events in use. I'll just click yes, that's fine. I'm happy to ignore them. And I'm going to go back to my player state and I'm going to paste. There we go, because then it drags all your settings, all your default items. Then I'm going to go back to my ALS player controller and I'm going to cut this begin looting code, compile this, and then I'm going to paste it into the player states event graph. So and compile, and now it's complaining about the HUD. So as I said earlier, we need to get access to our player controller. So in my case, I don't really want to cast to it, because if we cast it, then it's tying the player state and the player controller in memory together. That's inefficient. So in my class settings, I've already got a BPI player controller. I'm going to open this up and you'll see I already have a get player HUD function. If you don't have one, just add a new function called get players HUD and then make sure it returns your HUD. Then go back to your player controller and then you will see in your interfaces I have my get player HUD where I just return it, which means on my BP player state I can just delete this off. I can right click and do get player controller, then I can drag off and do player HUD. It'll send the interface message to this actor to say give me the HUD if you have it, and then we can drag it up and connect it like so. Much more efficient. We're not tying it together. There we go. And then finally we just need to enable the player state. So back in world settings, I'm just going to scroll down, and where we've got player state class, I'm just going to click BP player state just like that, and now I can save. And now if we try it, we should be able to interact and loot with the chest. And now you can see as I went up to the chest, if I press E, the looting interface shows. There we go, ladies and gentlemen, we have the player's inventory and the chest. Fantastic. And if I come back, press tab, our inventory still works completely fine. So if I come and just use this cube to get rid of it, so it's now gone in the player's inventory. Don't know what it really did to use the cube, but if I do it now, I can see I've got this loot here. If I just click this one to take it, I have now taken it, or I can store it between the chests, and then I can come off and press tab. There we go. So that's a very basic chest, and if that's all you want in your game, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. However, if you want to go more advanced with it, let's start looking into some animations, some sounds, little bits like that, just to really tweak it up. So for my lootable chest, I'm going to come back into it, and in the event graph here, I'm going to delete the events off, and we can click on the interactable loot, so we can actually override the events on the interactable component. If we right click and do add event, here are all the different events here. So the way the narrative interaction component works is when you first look at an object, and it's an interactable one, it will call begin focus. If you look away, it will call end focus. If you press the key to start interacting with it, it will first call begin interactive. By default, this goes, can they actually interact with it? Is it locked? Whatever it wants, but you can change the functionality of it. Then it calls on end interacted if you can't, or you finish your interaction, and if it is interactable, it will continue on and it will call on interacted to say this is what's happening when it's interacted with. And then if you deactivate or activate the component, it will call these two component activate and deactivate functions here. So what we're going to do is we're going to come and override the on interacted. So at this point, it's gone past can they interact with it, so it's not locked or anything like that. It can definitely be unlocked, so we're going to click on interact here. So on here, this is where I'm going to tell my chest to actually open up and play the sound. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag in the chest top here, and I'm going to drag off, and I'm going to do get relative rotation, and then this relative rotation, I'm just going to go and promote it to a variable, and I'll call this temp rotation, and this is going to be the current rotation of the lid here, because we're going to basically rotate it upwards and then play a sound. That's all I'm going to do for mine. So by storing the temp rotation here, it means we can now use a timeline to lerp between closed and open state. So after this, I'm going to drag off and I'm going to do add timeline, and I'm going to call it chest opening. I'm going to double click it, click track, and I'm going to click add a float track. My length, I'll set it to 1 second. I want it to take 1 second to open. I'm going to right click at the beginning and do add key, then right click at the end and do add key. I'll highlight the first key here. I'll set the time to 0 and the value to 0. And then I'll select the last key and I'll set the time to 1 and the value to 1 as well. And it'll create this funky little line here. What we can also do, just to make it a little smoother, is I will highlight both keys. I will right click on one and do auto. And what this is going to do is just add a nice curve to it. So it doesn't just go open, it will go ooh, and open up slowly, but over the course of 1 second. And now I can come back to the event graph and you'll see we now have this new track variable here. Let's just name it by clicking on new track here, press F2, and we'll call it opening time. And there we have our opening time. So now we need to actually open the chest. So what I'm going to do, drag in the chest, drag off and do set relative rotation, and I'll connect it to the update. And don't forget, this update is going to run every single tick of this opening time, so multiple times within 1 second in our case. The new rotation, I'm going to drag off and I'm going to type lerp. And a lerp is basically a way to smooth between two values based on an alpha. So I'm going to tick shortest path because you've all seen it sometimes when you do a rotation and it goes the opposite way that you think. It's something to do with the curves when you mess them up or something by accident. Shortest path just tells it go the shortest way. So if you do want your chest lid for some reason to go the long way around like that and open, don't tick shortest path. But in my case, I want it no matter what, it just goes up like that. So that's the shortest path. So value A is the starting position, which is our temp rotation, and starting B is the rotation that we want to go to. So I'm going to come back to my chest lid and I'm going to open it up, say about there. So yeah, I think 90 degrees is good. So I'm going to basically set this back to 0. I'll jump back into my event graph and I'll set the first one to be minus 90 like so. So if our rotation at the moment is 0 and we want it to go to 90, every single tick over a second it'll go 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 until it gets to the position it needs to go to. If we're changing the starting position each time, the alpha is going to be thrown off. So if our alpha is at 0.5, then 0.5 is half of A and B in our case, so that'll be 45. So the chest will be at 45 degrees. However, if we set the temp rotation to 45, then half of 45 and 90 is no longer 45. It's going to be something like 75 or something, meaning we're going to get a really jittery effect because we're moving the starting position. We have to cache the initial rotation so it doesn't change. The alternative option you've got is to just hard code it if that works for you. In my case, I want my chest to be semi-flexible if I've got different ones, so I'm going to tell it to get the relative position when it first gets it. So if I have different chest models with different rotations, it will remember the starting position for me. I hope that makes sense. If not, let me know and I'll come up with a better analogy. And then all we have to do now is tell it what alpha we want to use, which is going to be our opening time, like so. And now with this, all what I'm going to do is move the chest opening across to the side, and I'm just going to drag off of here and do play sound at location. And the sound we want is a chest opening sound. Now I do have some licensed sounds that I've bought for myself here. Chest opening, I've got 2 of them, so I've just turned it into a sound cue, and they're basically both 1 second long, which works really, really well. So I'm going to click my sound cue, click the addition there. The location we want to play the sound is the chest itself, so I'll just drag in the chest body, drag off, and I'll do get world location, and we'll plug it in. The reason we're using get sound at location instead of get sound 2D is if you use 2D, then every player is going to hear you open it if you've got a multiplayer game. Playing sound at location means it's localized, and then we can play with the sound settings later. And that should be it. So if we come back now and play it, you will see as we interact with this chest, it will open up and play the sound. So you'll see if we run up to it and interact with it, It opens up. There we go. How cool is that? So now what we need to do is we need to look at closing it again. So once we finish our looting. So in order for us to detect when we finish looting in this specific chest, we actually need to get our player state and bind to the inventory. And just like on our player state where we used on begin looting, we need to bind onto the on end looting. And it's real easy to do. So thankfully narrative makes this real easy for us already. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag this on interacted far away like so. And what I'm going to do is every time we interact, I'm going to bind to the event to say tell us once you've stopped looting. And then when we finish looting, we can unbind it, which means each chest won't have any idea the player exists until you start looting, then it'll know where the player is. So I'm going to drag off the interactor here and I'm going to do get inventory component from target. And then from here, I will do assign on end looting like so. I'm going to connect this up just at the beginning here. I can separate this out a little bit. So perfect. So what we need to do now is we actually just need to simply call this again, but in reverse. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag this down here like so, and then I'm going to copy the sound down here. And if you've got a chest closing sound, this is the perfect time to implement that. So for me, I've just added my chest closing sound. So if I come back to my sounds, chest, I now have this closing folder. I've got simply some licensed sounds. Like so. I can highlight them all, right click, create single queue. I'll call it SC_chest close. And then I can apply this to here like so. So now they play different sounds. And then finally, I can just drag this sound location to reverse from end like so. And what this means it's basically going to do is tell the timeline when you're going forwards, play the animation forward. So 0 to 1 seconds. When you're reversing from the end or when we end looting, play it from 1 second down back to 0 seconds. And because we've logged this temp rotation at the beginning, it means it should always work correctly from its current position. So let's give it a try. If we compile and save and jump back into the game now, it means we can run up to the chest and we can open it, and you'll see the chest opens. But once I click close, the chest now closes. Granted, the sound effects aren't fantastic, but how cool is that, ladies and gentlemen? We now have a chest we can run up to. We can interact with it. We can play or take items, whatever we want, like so. We can cross it off and the chest closes. And this is proper cool. So that is basically as far as we're going to take the chest. But let's actually make it so we can play around with it and add it to an existing quest and make the quest actually listen for our looting part to update. So in the previous tutorial, I made a quest where you come and talk to the shopkeeper and he says, la la la, you need to come back over to this fence over here, take out the bandits and return home. But what if the quest had an optional objective where you could recover the stolen items? Now that would be really cool and add more to our quest. So if you don't have narrative, quest and dialogue, you may have your own quest system, which is fine. This will still work for you, depending what systems you have in place. So I'm going to come and open my quest for the mountain bandits, and you will see the objectives are here. So we have go to the edge of town, find the break in the fence, clear out the camp, and then we return to the shopkeeper to say, hey, we've got your items back, which is good. But what if, after clearing out the camp, an optional objective appears to say, cover the stolen goods? That could be really cool, and it gives the players an option to search around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag off of this objective here, and I'm going to open up the tasks, and because I have narrative inventory and I have narrative quest and dialogue, narrative inventory comes with its own quest tasks in case you have it as a plugin so you can use them really easily. So I'm going to add the find item task here, and it'll say you need to find this item here. Okay, so what item do we need? Let's go and create our own item. So I'm going to come back to my content drawer, and inside my blueprints folder I have an items folder here. I've got some stolen goods right there actually from a previous tutorial before I had the inventory. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose narrative items, and I will choose a narrative item because stolen goods aren't equipable or clothing. So I'll click narrative item and I will call this NI for narrative item, and I'll call it stolen goods. Then I will open this up, and then we've got a bunch of different values we can set to it. So the pickup mesh, let's make it the same as this stolen good here. So we will come in and we will grab the potion bottle, the elixir, and we will add this into here. The thumbnail, I don't think I have a thumbnail of it yet, so we'll just leave it blank. The display name, I will call it stolen goods. The description, I will say some stolen goods that should be returned to the rightful owner. The weight, I will say, let's say it's 1 kilogram. There's quite a few stolen goods, and the quantity is 1. That's just dead simple. It's got a trade base value, so I'm going to set this to 0 because you can't trade it. You don't want to consume it. The use text, I will set to nothing because we're not going to use it, but I am going to come and override the function of can use, and instead of returning can use, I'm simply just going to return false. You can't use it because it's not your goods. It's not yours. It's stolen. It's equivalent request item in my case. And I'm going to override the function can be removed. What I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and do get owning inventory. And I'm going to right click and I'm going to do promote to validate again. And the reason I'm doing this is it very well may not exist in an inventory at this point, which is fine. So if we've got a valid inventory, what we're going to do is we're going to check the owner of this to see if it's the player. I'm going to drag off the owning inventory and do get owning controller. And this should equal our player controller. I'm going to drag off and do equals and then click the add addition there and click the branch like so. So if the owner of this inventory is our player, then we don't want them to remove it. So I'm just going to come off and drag false like so. However, if it's not the owner, then what I'm going to do is right click get can be removed and choose add call the parent function. And I'm just going to return this like so instead. And all this is going to do is basically allow narrative to take care of itself. So if narrative inventory has a special request or something on the item, or this is a child of another item, it'll basically go back to the parent and say, do what you'd normally do. And I'll also attach this to the is not valid like so, just in case for some reason it doesn't know who the owning inventory belongs to. Say if you picked up from the floor or something. And now if we compile and save, and with that, I think we are good. So I'm going to close these off. I'm going to come back to my lootable chest, and on the default items here, I'm just going to add my stolen goods. Now compile and save, just to make sure we've got all up and working. Then we can go back to our quest here. We need to find a stolen goods, like so. You can have specific items if you want to. If you have multiple stolen goods, for example, you can have just different items. So required quantity 1, blah, blah, blah. I will tick it as optional because it is an optional. And the description override should be find a stolen goods. That doesn't make much sense. So I'm going to override it. Find the port shopkeeper's stolen goods. That sounds much better. And then after the quest state 3, I'm just going to drag it back up to this quest here because it is an optional quest. So you can either follow the line across, come to return port shopkeeper, where we go and speak back to him, which means at this point this optional goods have gone and we can continue. Otherwise, you can come down this path to find the goods. The objective is complete. Then it says return back to the shopkeeper. And that's where we can plug in and say, if the quest has done this, then we can say, here are your stolen goods, which is perfect. And now if we compile and save, it's got an error. Quest state 3 exists twice. So why have I got 2 quest state 3s for some reason? Oh, that's odd. I'll just click quest state 3 and I'll call it quest state 5. File. There we go. And save. Now if we come back to the shopkeeper, I know he has some dialogue already on him. So I can come down to my interact begin dialogue, which is using the interactable again, and db port shopkeeper. Let's have a look. So he's got the quest assignment there. He's got the I have cleared out the bandit camp, won't be a problem anymore. However, what we can do is we can actually drag down and we can add a new player response now and say, I have cleared out the bandit camp and recovered your stolen goods. And then we can drag off of this and we can make the shopkeeper say something else like, there we go. So if you just take out the bandits, you will say, I have cleared out the bandit camp, there won't be a problem anymore. And then he'll say, oh, thank you, that's fantastic. Here, take this as a token of my gratitude, and you get 20 gold. Easy enough. However, if you have cleared out the bandit camp and recovered the stolen goods, then he can say, oh my, praise the high elf. I can't believe you managed to find them all. This is worth a small fortune. Thank you so much. Please take this gold as a token of my gratitude. You are always welcome here. So we can come and copy the event, paste it onto here, and then the gold, because you've done a better job, let's say you get 60. So you get 3 times as more for completing an optional objective. It's got the incentive, which is cool. Now, the only thing we need to do is make sure you can't select this if you've not already returned to him and done the battle, but you also have recovered the items. So I'm going to come and copy the condition, holding shift and right click, and then coming back, holding shift and pressing left click to paste it. What I'm also going to do is add a new one, and then narrative inventory also comes with some awesome conditions. So we can say has item in inventory, and we can say item class stolen goods, like so. And now with that, we should be able to see both options if we pick the stolen goods up, but if we don't, then we shouldn't be able to see this one at all. So if we do give them 60 currency, we also need to take the stolen goods back. So what I'm going to do is add another event here of consume item. I'm going to come and select our stolen goods, and I'm going to click end, so they take the item away from you. So if we compile and save, what I'm going to do is move this chest all the way over to here. So a little shorthand instead of dragging it over. I'm just going to click the chest. I'm going to fly all the way over to where I need to go, which is over here. And then I want the chest somewhere around here. So I'm going to right click the chest, which is still selected, and I will do snap object to view. And boom, the chest is now snapped to my view like that. Just makes life a little bit easier for you. Now I can drag it across. I can come and play with the rotation. I'll shrink it back down to 0. I'll press the end key to put it on the floor. And let's see, I want it to be hidden around here. So you can't see it when you directly come into the camp. You have to search around a little bit, but when you do, you should find the chest nice and easy. There we go, the chest is placed. So if you come down here, you can't see the chest, not at all. You have to fight them, then you have to look around. You might even miss it. it, but if you find this chest here, you're all good. We could also put other chests around so you can pick extra items up, but for now, I think this will be fine. And now, I think let's give it a go. Let's play the game and see how far we get with our new awesome quest. So now, if we start the game, the chest has gone. So if we come and speak to the shopkeeper, it will say, everything is for sale except my daughter, ha 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 ha. Do you need any help? Let's click yes. It'll say, yes, I actually do. Some bandits keep attacking my wagon. If you can somehow stop them attacking them, I'll give you a reward. We'll say, sure, we can help with that. Where are these bandits? And it'll say, perfect, they are the mountain bandits. They have a camp just up near the mountains. Go to the edge of town, follow the fence, break the fence. That's the quest we did last time. So it says go to the edge of town. So you'll see we can get to the edge of town and it'll say find the break in the fence. Okay, perfect. So the quest says we need to run around. I really need to figure out what keeps doing that. And then we've got the break in the fence. We go in and it says clear out the mountain bandits camp. Okay, so we come in, there's enemies, charge, get them. Okay, they don't attack us yet. Let's kill them all off like so. And then, you know, they run towards us, fire the bows and arrows, stuff like that. We kill them out. It says return to the port shopkeeper or optionally find the port shopkeeper's stolen goods. Okay, so we look around. Well, we can't loot that. There's a chest there. Cool. So let's come and loot the chest. You can see we have the stolen goods. Some stolen goods that should be returned to the rightful owner. Awesome. So let's take it. We've looted it back. And you'll see the objective has been updated. We now have to just return to the port shopkeeper. Cool. Okay, so let's just take a shortcut through the woods. Hopefully there's no tigers or anything in here. Perfect. We're all good. And now as we return to the port shopkeeper, and you'll see now when we interact with the shopkeeper, he will say welcome to my shop, and we have some options. Awesome. One of them will say we've cleared the bandit camp out. We can click that. We can keep the stolen goods, or we can come to I have cleared out the bandit camp and recovered your stolen goods. If we click that, he will say, oh, praise the high elf, you've managed to find them all, please take this currency, and there we go. And you'll see removed item from the inventory. We've just had it removed, and if we check our inventory, it is indeed gone, and we've gained 60 currency. How cool is that, ladies and gentlemen? A proper quest where you can recover the items if you want, loot the chest, and have an objective complete for you. All in one is an amazing quest. How cool is that? You may notice there's a small bug where it's saying we need to return to the port shopkeeper. All this is because on our quest, we're saying we must complete this ID here, but actually on the dialogue, what we're doing is we're completing number 9 at this point. So what I'm going to do is instead, I'll just drag down, add a dialogue line for the port shopkeeper, just a combined one, and I'll just make him say thank you again, really basically. I'll copy the number 10 and I'll paste this instead. So no matter which path you take, it will come down and play this one. There we go, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed it. If you've got any ideas for any other tutorials, please let me know in the description. I'm always happy to help. Thanks for watching. My name is Decryption, and I will see you next time.